My friends, we live in a world that tells us every single day that happiness can be purchased. We are surrounded by advertisements, by bright lights, by the endless promises of a better life if only we buy this product, own that house, or wear a certain brand. And yet, deep down, every one of us knows the truth. Wealth may buy comfort, but it cannot buy the joy that fills a soul. Real happiness isn't bought, it's discovered, and it's found in places the world often overlooks. Think about it. How many people do you know who have more than they could ever need, and yet they walk around empty, restless, unsatisfied? They have the money, they have the land, they have the possessions, but still they lie awake at night, searching for something that money will never deliver. They drink deeply from the wells of luxury, but they are thirsty still. Their smiles are painted on, their laughter is hollow, because deep inside their souls are longing for something that no bank account can provide. The story of Gooseberries paints this picture so clearly. Here we see a man who believed happiness would only come when he owned his little estate, when he had his gooseberry bushes planted, when he finally achieved the dream he had been chasing for years. And yes, he achieved it. He sat in his home, proud, satisfied, enjoying the fruits of his labor. But as the story tells us, it was a shallow happiness, a selfish happiness. It was the kind of happiness that blinds a person to the suffering of others. It was a happiness built on comfort, not on compassion. True happiness, my friends, is not found in owning more, but in being more. It is not discovered in the size of our house, but in the size of our heart. Real joy comes from a pure spirit, from knowing that our lives are aligned with truth, that we are living not only for ourselves but for others. It comes from loving deeply, giving generously, and walking humbly. I've met people who had very little, people who lived in small homes, people who wore simple clothes, and yet when you walked into their presence, you felt something money could never buy. You felt peace. You felt warmth, you felt joy, because happiness doesn't flow from wealth. It flows from within. It flows from a heart that knows the beauty of gratitude, the power of love, and the gift of purpose. You see, the world will tell you that you are nothing unless you have something. But the truth is, you can have everything and still be nothing if your soul is empty, and you can have nothing and still be rich in the things that truly matter. Love, kindness, faith, hope. Those are treasures that never fade. The danger we face is believing that comfort equals happiness. Comfort can numb us, comfort can distract us, but comfort cannot heal us. You can sit in a comfortable chair in a beautiful house and still feel miserable inside. You can drive the nicest car on the road and still be lost in despair. But when your heart is right, when your life is filled with gratitude and love, you can be sitting on the porch of a simple home, eating the humblest meal, and feel richer than any king. True happiness is not a dream waiting at the end of wealth. It is a choice we make every single day. It is found in how we treat others, in how we forgive, in how we serve, and in how we love. It is found in living for something greater than ourselves. So I say to you today, don't chase the kind of happiness that fades as quickly as the seasons. Don't trade your soul for things that will one day rust, break, or burn away. Seek the kind of joy that lasts forever, the joy that rises from a pure heart, a heart that knows the value of compassion and the beauty of humility, because happiness isn't bought, and it never will be. It is born inside us, and it grows when we choose to live not for possessions, but for purpose. My friends, there is a danger that lurks quietly in every heart, and it is the danger of selfish living. A life lived only for one's own pleasure is a wasted life. We may not see it at first because the world encourages us to think only of ourselves. The voices around us say, "Do what makes you happy. Take care of yourself first. Don't worry about anyone else." And little by little, if we're not careful, we begin to believe that we can build a meaningful life by ignoring the needs of others. But deep inside, we know it isn't true. When a person chooses to live only for themselves, something begins to die within them. At first, it might look like success. They may rise high in business. They may surround themselves with comforts. They may gather applause and praise. But when the lights go out and they are left alone with their own thoughts, they discover a haunting emptiness. Selfishness might bring temporary pleasure, but it robs the soul of lasting peace. The story of Gooseberries gives us a sharp reminder of this truth. Here is a man who dreamed only of his own comfort, his own little piece of land, his own gooseberries. He pursued it with determination, and in the end he got exactly what he wanted. But what did it cost him? While he was feasting on his gooseberries, others around him were hungry. While he was satisfied with his new home, others were living in misery. He had closed his ears to the cries of the suffering, and in doing so, he lost something far greater than wealth could give. He lost his humanity. That is the great danger of selfish living. When we refuse to see the pain of others, when we harden our hearts and turn away from the needs around us, we begin to lose the very thing that makes us human. Compassion is not just an option, it is a calling. Without it, we become cold, empty shells of who we were created to be. I've seen people who had everything this world could offer, and yet they lived small lives because everything revolved around themselves. They never lifted a hand to help. They never opened their hearts to care. And at the end of their journey, they discovered that all they had gained left them lonelier than ever. A selfish life is like a well without water. It looks deep, but it cannot quench a single thirst. But I've also seen men and women who gave their lives away, who poured themselves into serving others, who cared more about lifting people up than lifting themselves higher. And do you know what I saw in them? Joy, a kind of joy that cannot be bought, a joy that shines brighter than gold. They may not have had much in the eyes of the world, but they had something the world could never take away. They had meaning. They had purpose. The truth is, selfish living always shrinks us. It narrows our vision until we see only ourselves. But when we step out of that prison, when we choose to live with open hands and open hearts, our lives expand. We begin to see the world as it is. We begin to feel the heartbeat of others. And in serving them, in loving them, we find the very thing selfishness could never give: real life. A wasted life is not measured in years, but in impact. You can live a long time and still leave behind nothing of value if you lived only for yourself. But even a short life can echo for generations if it is marked by love, sacrifice, and compassion. That is what makes the difference. So let us not fall into the trap of living only for ourselves. Let us not close our ears to the cries of the suffering, because when we lose compassion, we lose our humanity. And when we lose our humanity, all the possessions, all the pleasures, all the applause in the world will not fill that emptiness. A life lived for self alone is a life wasted. My friends, the world has many ways of measuring greatness. Some say greatness is found in power, in wealth, in influence. Others believe greatness comes from education, from titles, from the size of the house we live in, or the name we carry. But all of those things are temporary, they are fleeting, and they do not touch the deepest truth of what it means to live a meaningful life. Real greatness is not measured in riches or recognition, but in kindness. To live with compassion is to live with purpose. When you look at the pages of history, the names we remember are not always the richest, nor the most powerful, but the ones who touched lives with compassion. The kings and queens, the generals and politicians, many of them are forgotten. But those who cared for the poor, those who lifted up the broken, those who gave themselves for others, they are the ones whose lives echo through time. Why? Because compassion never dies. It plants seeds in the hearts of others, and those seeds grow long after we are gone. In the story of Gooseberries, we see a man who thought greatness was found in building his own little paradise. He wanted his land, his gooseberries, his comfort. He achieved it, but at what cost? He shut himself off from the suffering of others. He chose a small, selfish life, and while he thought he had found happiness, he had missed the higher calling, the call to compassion. His riches could never hide the fact that he lived without purpose, because true purpose is always found in giving, not in keeping. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is strength. It takes courage to step into someone else's pain. It takes strength to put aside your own comfort for the sake of another. The easy path is to turn away, to ignore the cries of those who suffer. The harder path, the greater path, is to say, I will care, I will help, I will give. And that is where real greatness is revealed, not in what we take, but in what we give. I've met people with little to their name who had more greatness in their hearts than the wealthiest men. They didn't have riches, but they had kindness. They didn't have power, but they had compassion, and because of that, their lives were filled with purpose. Every day they lived, they made a difference, and isn't that what all of us truly long for? Not just to exist, not just to gather possessions, but to know that our lives mattered, that we touched someone, that the world is brighter because we were here. Greatness built on riches is fragile. It disappears the moment the riches fade, but greatness built on compassion endures forever. When you give of yourself, when you love others with a genuine heart, you create ripples that reach farther than you can imagine. One act of kindness can change a life. One word of compassion can heal a broken spirit. One moment of caring can turn darkness into light. The call to compassion is not just for a few, it is for all of us. It is not reserved for saints or heroes. It is the daily calling of every human heart. It begins in the small things, listening when someone needs to talk, lending a hand when someone is struggling, sharing what we have, even when it costs us. And as we live this way, we discover that compassion does more than change others. It changes us. It makes our hearts alive. It gives our lives direction. It fills our souls with meaning that selfishness can never provide. We were not created to live for ourselves alone. Deep down, we know this. That's why selfish living feels empty, and compassionate living feels full. Purpose comes when we answer the call to compassion, when we decide that life is not about how high we can climb, but about how many people we can lift along the way. So I say to you, if you want to live a life of greatness, don't chase riches, don't chase power, don't chase recognition. Instead, choose kindness, choose compassion, because in the end, that is the only greatness that will last. Real greatness is shown not in riches, but in kindness. To live with compassion is to live with purpose. My friends, sometimes the most powerful lessons come wrapped in the simplest stories. A tale may seem small, but within its words is a mirror that shows us the truth about ourselves. Gooseberries is such a story. On the surface, it is about a man chasing his dream, working hard until he can sit under the shade of his own trees, eating the gooseberries he long desired. But if we look deeper, we see a timeless truth unfolding before our eyes. We often spend our days chasing illusions, thinking they will give us joy, while neglecting the things that truly matter: love, justice, and humility. How many of us are caught in that same trap? We tell ourselves, if I can just get there, if I can just have that, then I will finally be happy. For one man it may be land, for another it may be wealth, for someone else it may be position or recognition. We pour ourselves into chasing after these things, and when we finally grasp them, we discover they do not satisfy the hunger of the soul. They are like salt water to a thirsty man. The more he drinks, the thirstier he becomes. The man in Gooseberries thought his dream of an estate and a simple fruit would bring him peace, but his happiness was shallow, and worse, it blinded him. He was so focused on his little paradise that he no longer saw the suffering of others. His pursuit of illusion cost him his compassion. And my friends, when we trade compassion for comfort, when we close our hearts for the sake of selfish satisfaction, we lose far more than we gain. This story is not just about him, it is about us. Each of us is tempted to build our own little world, our own place where we can shut out the cries of those in pain, where we can pretend all is well so long as we are satisfied. But illusions are fragile, they will crumble, and when they do, what will remain? Will we look back on lives filled with love, justice, and humility, or will we see years wasted on chasing shadows that vanish in the light of truth? Love is what gives meaning to life. Without love, our riches are empty, our achievements are hollow, and our days are cold. Love is not just an emotion, it is action. It is the willingness to see others, to care, to give, to forgive. Love stretches beyond ourselves and makes us alive. Justice is the courage to stand for what is right, even when it costs us something. It is the refusal to ignore the cries of the suffering. And humility, oh, how rare and precious humility is. Humility teaches us that life is not about building a throne for ourselves, but about kneeling low enough to lift another. We live in a world that worships illusions. Everywhere we turn, we are told that happiness is just one purchase away, one promotion away, one achievement away. But the story of Gooseberries whispers a different truth. Happiness is not found in illusions. It is found in reality, and reality is love. Reality is justice. Reality is humility. These are the treasures that do not fade, that cannot be stolen, that will outlast the fleeting pleasures of this world. I've seen men who spent their lives chasing dreams of success, only to reach the end and find themselves alone, empty, filled with regret. And I've seen others who may not have had much in the eyes of the world, but they loved well, they lived humbly, they stood for what was right, and when their time came to leave this earth, they left behind a legacy that no amount of wealth could buy. So the lesson of Gooseberries is clear. Do not be deceived by illusions. Do not waste your years chasing what cannot satisfy. Open your eyes to what truly matters. Choose love because it never fails. Choose justice because it lifts the oppressed. Choose humility because it makes us whole. A simple story reveals a timeless truth. We often chase illusions while neglecting what truly matters: love, justice, and humility. My friends, comfort is one of the greatest blessings of life, but it is also one of the greatest dangers. There is nothing wrong with wanting a warm home, a good meal, a safe place to rest. We all desire these things, and rightly so. But when comfort becomes our only pursuit, when we wrap ourselves so tightly in prosperity that we can no longer hear the cries of those outside our walls, then comfort becomes an illusion. Comfort without conscience blinds us. Prosperity can become a prison if it shuts us off from the needs of others. The man in Gooseberries believed he had found the good life. He sat back in his chair, satisfied with his estate, proud of his gooseberry bushes, convinced that happiness had finally come. But his comfort was shallow, and his conscience was asleep. While he enjoyed his peace, countless others lived in suffering. He no longer saw them, no longer heard them, because his prosperity had become a barrier between him and reality. His comfort had imprisoned him, trapping him in a world too small for compassion, too narrow for love. How easy it is for us to fall into that same trap. We live in a time when so much is built around convenience, around making life easier, smoother, more comfortable. And yet the danger is not in the comforts themselves, but in what they can do to our hearts. comfort can dull our vision. It can make us forget that while we are warm, someone else is cold. While we are full, someone else is hungry. While we are safe, someone else is in danger. If comfort causes us to forget the suffering of others, then it is no blessing at all. It is a prison that slowly takes away our humanity. Prosperity without compassion hardens the soul. It whispers to us, "You deserve this, you've earned this, don't worry about anyone else." And little by little, we stop seeing beyond ourselves. The walls of our prosperity rise higher, and outside those walls, the cries of the poor grow faint until they disappear altogether. And when that happens, my friends, we lose more than just our conscience. We lose our purpose. Because life was never meant to be lived in isolation, locked away in comfort, blind to the needs of others. The illusion of comfort is that it feels permanent, but it never is. Riches can vanish in a day, health can fade in a moment, security can crumble without warning, and when it does, what will remain? If we have lived only for comfort, then when it disappears, we are left with nothing. But if we have lived with compassion, if we have used our comfort to bless others, then even when prosperity fades, our lives remain full, because purpose can never be taken away. I have seen people with very little who were rich in spirit because they gave what they had. And I have seen others with great wealth who were poor in heart because they hoarded everything for themselves. One lived free, the other lived imprisoned. Prosperity can bless us, but it can also chain us. The choice lies in how we use it. Comfort should never be an escape from responsibility. It should be a platform from which we reach others. If we have been blessed, it is not to close our doors, but to open them wider. It is not to forget the suffering, but to help ease it. The illusion of comfort is believing it is the goal of life. The truth is, comfort is a tool, and its purpose is not to shield us from the world, but to empower us to serve within it. The story of Gooseberries reminds us that comfort without conscience is a dangerous lie. It is a happiness that deceives, a prosperity that imprisons. But when comfort is joined with compassion, when prosperity is used with purpose, it becomes a blessing not just to us, but to everyone it touches. Comfort without conscience blinds us. Prosperity can become a prison if it shuts us off from the needs of others. My friends, life is made up of choices. Every day, from the moment we open our eyes in the morning until we lay our heads down at night, we are shaping a story with the decisions we make. Some choices may seem small, hardly worth noticing, but together they form the path of our lives. And the truth is, each generation must decide for itself. Will we live selfishly, or will we choose to make a difference? Because our stories are not written tomorrow. They are written today, in the moments we live, in the decisions we make right now. The story of Gooseberries is not just about one man's pursuit of comfort. It is about a choice. He chose to live for himself, to build his own paradise, to shut out the world and its suffering, so he could enjoy his gooseberries in peace. And while he thought he was securing happiness, he was in fact wasting the deeper purpose of his life. His story became one of selfishness, not of significance. And the sobering truth is this: the same choice stands before us. We can live only for ourselves, or we can decide that our lives will matter beyond our own desires. The power of choice is a gift. None of us can control every circumstance we face, but all of us can choose how we respond. We can choose bitterness, or we can choose forgiveness. We can choose greed, or we can choose generosity. We can choose selfish comfort, or we can choose compassionate service. These choices are not abstract. They are real, they are daily, and they are building the legacy we will leave behind. Selfish living is the easy road. It requires nothing but closing our eyes and hearts to the needs of others. But though it may seem easy, it is a path that leads to emptiness. A selfish life may be filled with possessions, but it will never be filled with meaning. It may be decorated with achievements, but it will be barren of joy. On the other hand, the choice to live for others may cost us something. It may cost our time, our comfort, even our pride, but it gives us back something far greater. It gives us purpose, it gives us peace, it gives us the knowledge that our days on this earth were not wasted. Every generation faces this decision, but not every generation makes the right one. We look back in history and see moments when people chose selfishness, and the result was suffering, injustice, and pain. But we also see moments when people chose compassion, when they chose to fight for justice, when they chose to stand for truth, even when it was costly. And those are the moments that shine. Those are the lives that change the world. The question is not what others before us have chosen, but what we will choose today. You and I cannot rewrite the past, but we can write the future. We can decide whether our lives will echo with selfishness or with service, with greed or with generosity, with apathy or with love. The choice before us is not a distant one. It is here, it is now, and it is ours to make. Do not believe the lie that your choices do not matter. Every act of kindness matters. Every word of compassion matters. Every stand for justice matters. It may seem small at the moment, but like a stone dropped in the water, the ripples go farther than you can see. Your life touches lives you may never know, and your choices shape a story that will be told long after you are gone. The man in Gooseberries wrote his story in selfish comfort, and it stands as a warning to us. But our story is not finished yet. We are still holding the pen. We are still shaping the pages, and the choice is before us. Will we live only for ourselves, or will we make a difference that endures? Each generation must decide. Each person must choose, and our stories are written by the choices we make today. Thank you for spending this time with me as we walked through these powerful lessons. If these words spoke to your heart, don't keep them to yourself. Share them with someone who needs encouragement today. Make sure to like this video so more people can hear the message of truth and compassion. Subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories that inspire and challenge us to live with purpose. Until next time, remember, your choices today are writing the story of your tomorrow.